Here it is, look, the new Porsche 911 GT3. Now, over the next 25 minutes or so, we'll have all the technical details, lots more video footage, lots more photographs as well of this new model based on the 992. And we'll also talk about why the 911 GT3 is so special. But first things first, please subscribe to the DriveNation YouTube channel. Do that now. Thank you. We're going to talk about the new 911 GT3, and that's the reason that we've had to hold on to this podcast for a few more hours. We've had to wait for the embargo to lift. And actually, we're recording this on the Friday morning before the embargo lifts. And so while we've got the technical information, Andrew, we haven't yet seen the car. So,
no.
I don't know, should we speculate a bit? It's a shame it's a four-door these days, isn't it? But
yeah,
I suppose
well,
they have to keep it fresh.
SUV, whatever. We haven't seen the car, but I mean, I can't imagine we're going to be terribly surprised.
No. It probably looks like a 911 with a wing.
It's going to look like a GT3.
Okay, so this is the 7th 911 GT3, and
wow.
The first one came out around 21 years ago. So we get a new GT3 every 3 years. Not quite Halley's Comet, is it really? But a sort of significant moment nonetheless. And frankly, if you're doing a weekly podcast, you have to make the most of these occasions, don't you? So we're going to talk about it in some detail. The thing about the GT3 that always gets me is that they'll launch a new one, and it's always Andreas Preuninger will talk you through all the fine details that they've made, all the refinements that they've made to this latest one to make it more powerful, to make it faster. And every single time he does that, you think, wow, how on earth are you going to, take it to the next level beyond this one? What is there left to do? And with this one, we know, don't we? Because it's got that new Swan style rear wing, but also it's got double wishbone front suspension rather than a McPherson strut, the first 911 to have that. So it's as though 911 GT3 development got to a point where they'd maximised everything that they had available to them, and they had to take a big quantum step forward just to find that next bit of ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? One of the things that also interests me about it is that despite the fact that they are doing this stuff, they are finding areas in which to gain that ground. What they're not doing is compromising the principle. I mean, clearly, there are turbocharged GT cars, they're called GT2s. But you would have thought, wouldn't you, that with turbochargers on all standard 911s now, and this being the performance one, that it would be logical for this one to be a turbocharged car, but it's not. And it interests me because it kind of bucks the trend, doesn't it, of the sort of more that, that every generation of car has to be substantially more powerful than the previous one. I mean, this car is 10 horsepower more than the last one. I mean, it really is, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. It's 2%. And they just seem to be much more interested in refining the details and concentrating on the driving experience rather than going after customers who will only buy a car if it's got 1,000 horsepower and this, that and the other. They build cars for people who like to drive, not for cars for people who like to boast about statistics in pub saloon bars or whatever. And that I guess is what I've always liked about these cars, is that they have that very technical stuff that you're talking about is to me the root of their appeal, and that to me is so much more engaging and talks to me as a driver so much more than, oh look, it's got another 100 horsepower. I'm just not bothered by that. It's enough.
Before we go any further, do you like my new camera angle? If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm sitting somewhere else in my flat. A few people commented that my wall looked very naked behind me, so I've got a new camera angle, a less comfortable seat, but my lovely poster of the 24 hours of Daytona.
The things you do for your audience. You're such a giver.
1971. Very generous, aren't we? Okay, so let's run through some of the technical details on the new Porsche 911 GT3. As you said, still a 4-litre, normally aspirated boxer 6-cylinder, 510 PS, so that's 503 brake horsepower, isn't it? More sophisticated aerodynamics. We've mentioned the double wishbone front axle. Now, Still, you have the option of a PDK or a manual gearbox. Now, here's a reason to have the manual. With a stick and a third pedal, it'll do 199 miles per hour, but with PDK, a mere 198.
Oh, well, I mean, that's all you need, isn't it? Well, I'll tell you one thing is quite interesting, is the manual is now, I think this is right, only 17 kilograms lighter than the PDK. Now, PDKs are the heaviest form of transmission you can get. They're heavier than conventional autos. It's one of the reasons manufacturers used to quote for not having them, usually as an excuse, because actually the other thing about PDKs is they're terribly expensive. But now, I mean, 18 I mean, you know, I would just have one manual. I mean, I just, you know, of all cars to me, a GT3 should be manual. Even so, there isn't that big weight hit. And the power's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it now completely splits the difference between the old GT3 and the last GT3 RS. So the old GT3 I think was 500 PS, the GT3 RS was 520, and this is 510. So it's kind of going straight down the middle, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But
and it's still, plenty, as you say.
It is plenty, and the other thing is, you know, this is basically, and I really do mean this, it's the racing car engine. It's the engine. You know, if you go and race in Carrera Cup in your Cup car, that's the engine. I mean, it has changed remarkably little. I would think that all the internals are the same as the race car. And it is such, wow, it is such an engine. It is so, the way that it delivers what it does, kind of hardwired straight into your soul. You know, it's grounds for having the car all by itself, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's often been the way with GT3 engines, isn't it? But this, yeah, these latest ones, the post-Mexico ones, they're still spectacular things, really the heart of the car. And as you say, reason enough to long to own one of those cars. They just make the whole driving experience, and you step out of one. This is what I always think when I get out of any car, really, that's got a soaring, normally aspirated engine like that. I just think, I don't ever want to drive a turbo car again. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
You don't miss that torque hit, do you? You just, the way it lives on revs, the way, feeling it pull through a ratio, a really high revving engine, it's just, yeah, it's intoxicating.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and it's more than fast enough. More than.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Porsche says, go on, keep going.
I was going to say, by my calculations, it's 5 kilograms heavier than the last one, which doesn't strike me as being very much. Obviously 10 horsepower more powerful. It's got an identical 0 to 62 time, 3.4 seconds. Again, it just interests me. You know, you'd think that, you know, any other manufacturer would want to claim that it's faster than the last one, but Porsche don't seem to be in the least bit bothered by that. Can we talk Nurburgring lap times?
It's unavoidable, isn't it, really? Before you do, though, Porsche says it generates significantly higher levels of downforce without noticeably affecting the drag coefficient, which is interesting. But go on, get on to Nurburgring lap times.
No, just on the downforce, I'm always suspicious of car manufacturers who play that card. Significantly, well, put some numbers on it. If it's significant, tell us what it is. Because significant is so subjective, and it's significant to who? To you, to me, to them?
It could just mean measurable. It could be a few kilos.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know, a kilo could be described as something. And so, I mean, maybe it does, but you would have thought that if they had done really, really impressive numbers, why wouldn't you say what they are?
Good point.
And I don't know. I mean, things, and this is like kind of, you know, this is the journalist in me coming out and just thinking that's just something which, I don't know. I just wish, you know, if you're going to say something like that, back it up with some facts. Because if you don't, people like me will always think you haven't got the facts to back it up. Now, I mean, I'm not in any way suggesting that this car has got, you know, miserable levels of downforce or anything else. I'm sure it's pretty good. I just think it would be so much more impressive if they actually told us what it was. And if you asked Porsche how much downforce does this car have, well, we will. I'd be interested to see if you even get an answer out of them. Maybe you will, maybe you won't.
But do you? I mean, we're pretty sceptical about downforce in road cars anyway. Is it a concern that they are, you know, they're not putting a number on it, but they're talking about higher levels of downforce? That has never made a car better to drive on the road, ever.
Not on the road, no, you're absolutely right. But this is a track car. And I'll tell you where downforce does work with these sorts of cars. It's just stability. You know, if you drive I drove a Manthey Racing GT3 RS at Silverstone not that long ago, which has got a lot of aero work on it. And what the aero did on that car, I've no idea what the downforce number was. It just made it easier to drive, which meant you could have more confidence, which meant you enjoyed driving the car more. So to that extent, to me, downforce does work on a car which has a track brief. There's no point in using downforce on the road, because if you're going right through corners fast enough for downforce to be an issue on a public road, then you shouldn't be driving a car like that. But on a car like this, and Porsche will tell you that most of its owners will take their car on a track at one time or another, even GT3s, let alone GT3 RSs. If you can just get that high-speed stability, which really allows you to commit, then I think it is doing a useful job. I couldn't care less what it does in terms of, G-force and that sort of thing. Not interested.
No. Okay, well, it must be that extra downforce, whatever the number is, that helps with that Nurburgring lap time. So go on, what do you make of that?
So which lap time? So they quote 2, don't they? They quote, what is it, 6:55.2 for that's the Bridge to Gantry, isn't it? That's the 20.4k. Lap.
No, it actually just cuts out it's called the T13 straight. It's like a 200-meter stretch of tarmac. There are now, it seems to be there are 2 ways of measuring a full Nurburgring lap time, and it depends where you cut the beam, basically right at the end of the lap, because it's only 4 seconds
misunderstood.
Different. Yeah.
So the 2 times they quoted are 6:55.2 for the 20.4k circuit, and a 6:59.9 for the full 20.8 kilometre circuit. They must have been very pleased with the stopwatch men on that one. Now, so I don't know how they measured the last one, but the last one did a 7:12.7. Yeah. So at the very best, this new car is going nearly 13 seconds a lap faster. If you take it by the other measure, then that's whatever it is, 17, 18 seconds a lap faster, which is, even around the Nürburgring, that's a lot of time, isn't it? For a car which has hardly any more power and weighs 5 kilograms more. So where is that time coming from? Do you think it's coming from aero? Do you think it's coming from the front suspension? Or do you perhaps think it's coming from the fact that last time the car was on Cup 2s and this time it was on Cup 2Rs?
Tricky one. We've spoken about this before, haven't we?
Chocolate tyres.
Those Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R, they're made of chewing gum, aren't they? So an astonishing tyre to drive on. Yeah. And just an incredible tool for extracting lap times out of a car as well. So, I mean, we're right to highlight that, aren't we? There's inevitably
I mean, for the avoidance of doubt, all 3, I'm sure, will make a difference. But if you ask me, or indeed if you ask Porsche, I'd be interested to hear the answer. But certainly if you ask me what is likely to have been the greatest contributor to that really pretty stark increase in lap time, decrease in lap time, I'm going the tyres. I'm going the tyres all day long, aren't you?
Yeah, it's got to be most of it. Do you remember only, less than a decade ago, it was maybe 8 years ago, I can't remember actually, when the 918 Spider and the McLaren P1 were dipping under 7 minutes around the Nürburgring. Yeah. And now a 911 GT3 is a sub-7 car around there.
Not even a GT3 RS.
Yeah.
As normally aspirated. Yeah. Okay, a GT3, saying bog standard is a relative term when it comes to GT3s, but even so, it is absolutely, I mean, sub-7 used to be the thing that people always used to talk about, isn't it? It was, Ferrari didn't quote a time. In fact, McLaren didn't even for the P1, did they? All McLaren would say was that it would go sub-7. I don't think they ever said, I don't think they ever put a number on it. Ferrari didn't even go down that road. And these were the fastest, this was like 2014, 2015. So, not decades ago, 6-7 years ago. And these cars, they were busting their asses to get under 7 minutes. And now here's a street GT3 which is going to do it.
Astonishing, isn't it? And that
it is absolutely amazing.
That P1, so it's 2 or 3 seconds quicker. I mean, the track has perhaps evolved a bit since then. We know tyre technology has come a long way, but that P1 is probably weighs about the same, doesn't it, as a 911 GT3, which is 1,418 kilograms with a manual gearbox.
But they'd have
P1
done the time in a PDK, wouldn't they? So 1435.
They will have done 1435. Yeah. So, but the P1's got getting on for double the power. It's about 900 and something, isn't it? The P1, and it's got 600 kilograms of downforce, much more than the GT3, and that equates to 2 or 3 seconds around the longest track on Earth. It's just,
and it's a 2-seat car that was only ever conceived to go as fast as it could possibly go. Whereas a 911 is a daily driver. A GT3 is a daily driver, no question at all. I know people who use, as do you, their GT3s as daily drivers. I mean, fair play to them. It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing.
Priced in the UK from £123,100. So
it's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you remember when they were 80 grand? That was probably 10 years ago now, wasn't it? A GT3 was 80 grand.
Yeah, I mean, the last one, I looked up the last one. I think it was, 111,802 is the number I've got written down here.
Ah, okay.
So it's gone up 12 grand. Yeah, which is more than 10%, isn't it?
But they could charge 150 for those, couldn't they?
They could. And the other thing is that, you were talking about when you get out of those GT3s and how you make it fit. I mean, when I get out of those GT3s, what I think to myself is that, it sits at a level, and then above that level there are what we call conventional supercars from very limited volume manufacturers, with a lot more power and mid-engine 2-seaters and whatever. And you get out of a GT3 and you think, well, actually, what are those other cars actually buying you? Are they really that much faster? Are they any more fun to drive? And clearly they're much more expensive. Clearly you can use them in fewer numbers of ways. And I get out of those GT3s and I just think that for me, for what I want a car to do, they're just there. And obviously we must reserve judgment about this car, and it's possible they've made a complete Horlicks of it, and we get out of it and thinking, what do they think they're playing? I kind of doubt that's going to happen. I expect it's going to be amazing, but I just think that is the way that people should be thinking, because I think the power level is about right, and they should just be thinking about getting weight out of the car and just making these things better to drive.
I find it interesting. You're absolutely right that no one really has come along with a direct competitor to this car and followed the same technical blueprint, offering a manual, not ramping up power with every iteration. Just staying true to those original principles.
I mean, there have been some sort of attempts at. I mean, something like a V12 Vantage Aston. That's kind of going down that sort of route. And I guess Mercedes would be jumping up and down and go, hang on, what about us? What about the GTR AMG and that sort of thing? But they're just not quite there, are they? I mean, don't get me. I mean, a V12 Vantage S is just a wonderful car, and it connects with me emotionally. But give me a lap and a racetrack, I'd just get in the GT3 because it would just be better, wouldn't it? And the same is true of the GT. I mean, the GT3 is just a better, lighter, more engaging, more capable car. And so, I think the reason there have, as you say, been so few people to have a go at it, is because it must just be so hard. How do you do it?
Yeah, you're really setting yourself up for a full taking on a car like that.
Maybe one day Ferrari will do a Dino, or McLaren will bring something in below the price point of the new Artura, which I really shouldn't say with an Italian accent, should I? But I'm not holding my breath because I don't think they think that's where their business is, and I kind of understand that. So I think for now, Porsche got the field to itself.
So what are you hoping for from this new GT3? Just more of the same, or do you want it to do something that earlier ones haven't done before?
I just want it to be better at the stuff those cars have always been good at. I can't really see how the powertrain can get any better. I love the usability of those cars. That's why I'm sure, I don't know this, but I'm sure there will be a touring version coming along. I can't see why they wouldn't. Those cars are so revered now. Their residuals are so good. And to me, of all those cars, be they GT3s, GT3 RSs, GT2 RSs, whatever. It's that touring which to me is the sweet spot, because it seems to me you don't lose very much, but the visual subtlety of it and just that slight extra veneer of civility in it, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the car when I'm driving it like an idiot. But just to be able to go about your business so discreetly in what to the outside world looks to like to anybody like just another 911. I mean, if I had one, I'd have it in a dark colour, I'd take all the badges off it, and I would just love it and keep it forever. So I just hope that, you know, I am confident that the car will be as good, if not better to drive than any previous GT3. And so I would just like it to be even easier to live with too. So, you know, the head and the heart are even more catered for. But, you know, I'm not complaining about the last one. It's a wonderful thing. But yeah, that's what I would do. What about you?
Well, I've just been wondering about what they might do with it to try and move the game along. And I think it would be a mistake, wouldn't it, to make the car tougher, harder riding in that pursuit of more performance. It would be a mistake if it was less usable, if it was more raw, more of a pain in the neck in normal driving than the previous
But that's
one.
what a GT3 RS is for, isn't it?
Exactly right. Yeah.
And actually, I thought the previous, well, as in the most recent GT3 RS, was in danger of going a little bit too far down that road, because it's very raw. And it is compromised on the road. I mean, it's mega on the track, but even on the track, and I do quite like this about it, and this is where it contrasted quite starkly with the Manthey racing car. It's quite tricky. You do kind of need to have your wits about you on a track in a GT3 RS. It is set up to be a little bit spiky. I mean, it's not vicious or anything else, but you need to be on your toes. You can't just take it for granted that it's always going to come back and that you can be a bit sort of slack with it or whatever. You just need to be on it a bit. And I don't mind that on the track, but on the road, and the GT3 RS is still a road car, I just found it was just a bit too... I think they double the spring rate on that car over the previous one, or it was up 50% or something. And I think that just went too far for that car's purpose. But you know, these things are all subjective, and that's just my view. But the GT3, I think, was pretty spot on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it? It's so right that I get the sense from car manufacturers that often they can't bear to stand still, and unless they can show on a spreadsheet where gains have been made, a car won't make its way out the door.
But also the customer doesn't want to be buying an old car, does he or she? That's the thing, isn't it? You know, they could have left the old GT3 in production, but then, you know, the market would get saturated with cars. The people were thinking, do I really want to buy a car that's been in the marketplace for 4 years? Probably not. And they'd just be storing up all sorts of trouble for themselves. And so that they do, although Porsche obviously don't say how many they build, just by the length of time it's in production, they do keep numbers down. They do keep on top of the residuals. But I mean, you know, if you went and drove a GT3 Touring now, I don't think you'd be getting out of that and thinking, oh my goodness, this car needs replacing.
No, I'm sure you wouldn't.
You get out of it and you still think, frankly, there's nothing for this money that I'd rather have. And I think probably the big change, I think, you know, in 80% of the driving that 80% of the people will do will be the stuff that's actually common to other 992s. It'll be the connectivity, and it'll be the nav system, and it'll be the TFT readouts and all that sort of thing, all of which will make the car feel a lot more sophisticated. Yeah.
Well, we'll drive it soon enough, and we'll find out. But I just hope that as they chase more and more performance and more grip, which is actually what the double wishbone front axle is all about, they haven't forgotten that these cars are supposed to be engaging and rewarding at not completely bonkers speeds on the public highway. So, I don't know. We'll find out, I suppose.